You're listening to Science Coast with Mallory Havens and
Chris White.
And today our guest is
Tom Bristow.
Welcome back, Tom.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So today we wanted to talk to you about near-death experiences, or what could actually be happening in the brain when people have these experiences of being told that they had died and then they experience things.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard they tried to do studies where they'd put like things on top of cabinets and see if people could know what they said or things like that when there's that out-of-body experience.
Right.
So what's your position on near-death experiences?
Well, you know, the realization I think we all have to come to is it's near death. They're not dead.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big difference. You know, kind of in the old Monty Python flick of the Holy Grail.
Love that movie.
Yeah, remember? Or no, wasn't? No. I'm sorry. It was The Princess Bride when Billy Crystal says mostly dead, right?
He's
but not
only mostly
he's
dead.
mostly dead, but not dead. And so, you know, first of all, I would never deny the experiences that people have when they do experience these feelings, these thoughts, these visions, when they have this type of trauma in their life. So, you know, that's real to them, and I think, you know, I would acknowledge that. I do acknowledge that, but you know, the question is then how does one interpret those experiences that the individual is having? And so, you know, I think that there are some who want to take those experiences and use them to validate the fact that there is a consciousness
Outside of a physical body?
Outside of a physical body, that the consciousness exists outside a physical body. And the reality is we just don't have any evidence of that there is a consciousness that exists outside a physical body.
But what about ghosts? No,
yeah,
I'm kidding.
no. You know, once again, yeah, I don't know what to say about them. I never saw a ghost. I know people have seen ghosts, and so all I can say is okay. But there's just no empirical way to prove that. And,
right.
and you know, the programs on TV about ghost hunting and all that, I mean, those are things that just lead people down pathways to confirm, you know, what they want to believe anyway.
Oh, yeah. Those devices are not scientific.
Right, exactly. So I think that, you know, these near-death experiences are a reality for some people. You know, only 9 to 20% of the people experience those near-death experiences, and the other people don't. A lot of people don't.
So you were mentioning earlier this notion of, you know, wanting to use near-death experiences to validate their beliefs about consciousness, but the word soul is the one that I think of when people talk about near-death experiences proving that there is a soul, and it's
right.
the soul that's coming out of the body, and that's where the essence of who you are actually resides.
Right.
So as a neuropsychologist, can you help me understand the differences between when people talk about a soul and talk about, you know, consciousness?
Well, I think people tend to equate soul with a consciousness. And, you know, those are things that people believe, and they serve a function in that person's life. You know, one thing I realized as a clinical psychologist and when working with individuals is you have to be very cautious about challenging the faith, the beliefs of people, because sometimes you can do a great deal of harm. And a lot of times when positions of belief are challenged, any of us will find something to replace that belief to where it just doesn't disappear, but you kind of refocus your cognitive understanding and framework so that the system is okay. And I mean us personally, because when you challenge those things, people get very anxious. You know, they become very upset when their beliefs are challenged. And so the brain doesn't like that. The brain doesn't like that because that cognitive structure puts it any of us in our framework, right, to function in a way that feels comfortable for us. I never know who said this statement, and if any of you can help me, I thought it was Sartre. But, Sartre said, to believe or not to believe in God is an act of faith. And once you make that decision, then you go about the rest of your life trying to finding the evidence to validate your position.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But did Sartre say that?
I
don't
have
know who
no
said
idea.
that. But anyway, the point is simply with near-death experiences, as I said, and they estimate about 9 to 20% of the people will have them. Not all of them are positive. Some people have very traumatic kind of memories and experiences and are negative in nature. So it's not universal that everyone has
ancestors greeting them.
That's not a universal happening with this. And so, people may tend to look at these with the fact that, well, this kind of then validates what I've been thinking and feeling and believing. And, does the experience validate what you were believing, or does what you were believing
create
the experience? Exactly.
One of the things that's common, I think, at least in the media, is this notion that at your death, your life flashes before your eyes.
Yes, I've heard that too.
And I've recently read an article where they've done some studies, and as the brain begins to shut down, what they say is that these, life flashing before your eyes is simply the merging of your conscious and unconscious brains. That as you function in normal life, you have to be able to separate your large stack of memory from what's happening in your daily, immediate present. And if you can't, then you lose the ability to function because there's just so much going on in your brain.
Right.
Well, you're also not thinking like, okay, peristalsis and digestive system keep going, and blood vessels dilate, now constrict, and
right. So there's this enormous amount of stuff that's not in the front in some sense. That's not part of your immediate conscious engagement with the world. And so the argument was that as the brain begins to shut down, that boundary between the subconscious and your memories and the conscious front part of this is what's happening right now begins to merge and blend. And so those memories get pushed into your immediate consciousness, which is then perceived as, you just get this flood of your lifetime's memories immediately becoming available.
Right. And I would say that in the circumstances when people experience a trauma and it's a near-death kind of situation for an individual, that, the whole filtering system of the brain that gives us the ability to function on a daily basis begins to dissipate. And why? Well, when the oxygen in the brain starts to minimize, the brain really can't function as efficiently as it's been designed to do. And so, Chris, you may be right on target with that, is with the filtering system beginning to break down, there then is a flood of mental activity, brain activity, that begins to be coming to the forefront, which is out of our control at this point in time.
Non-standard.
right.
Brain function.
Right.
You can't generate enough ATP, so the floodgates get open.
Right. And there it happens. And that doesn't happen to everybody, and so it's kind of specific to the person, and the makeup of the neuroanatomical makeup of that individual would be my thinking.
Well, I'll say I have not died before, as you may be able to tell.
If you did, you look great.
Thank you.
She's an amazing zombie. That's all I gotta say.
I almost drowned once when I was a teenager, and I didn't, my heart didn't stop or anything. I did inhale water, but I remember everything. When I realized I wasn't going to be able to surface, I just got incredibly calm. It's the calmest I've ever been in my life. Everything went black, and I said, oh, this is the end. And I felt so relaxed and inhaled, and that's when I got rescued. Yeah. But nothing flashed before my eyes. It was just the most peaceful I've ever been.
Were you conscious the entire time?
I think I lost it at the end a little bit, but I quickly came back.
So you have a lot of recall. You have a lot of memory from the event.
Yes. My brain did not break down those two barriers. My life did not flash before my eyes.
Did you change as a consequence of that situation?
Not directly. I didn't. In speaking to validating beliefs or not, I didn't take it as a religious experience or not. Did I become less religious throughout my life and not religious? Yes, but I don't think it's related to that.
Mm-hmm. You know, the question I've had about these things too is, when do you technically die? Because, you know, you figure when the body just doesn't all of a sudden operate. It kind of like, it breaks down over a period of time.
It's not an on-off switch.
Yeah, it's not an on-off switch, exactly. And so, you know, as you guys would know better than I, is it Einstein's theory that energy is never destroyed, it's just transferred?
Right.
And so sometimes, is that transference of energy, is that something that we call a soul? You know, and you know, with that energy, then
no,
but that energy goes back into space to some degree, right?
But what type of energy are you talking about?
Well, I don't really know.
I'm
not the physicist or the scientist.
The body's potential energy, right? Like, because my meat,
but it's
my structure,
still there.
Yeah, but it can be broken down and used by other organisms.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to have a class about energy.
Yes, I think so. I mean, what's the photography they use to photograph images, energy leaving bodies, and you know, when they take a picture of a person that's lost a leg,
like
the energy,
auras?
the aura or the energy still can form the shape of the leg even though it's been amputated. You're going to dismiss that.
I have not heard of these pictures. I would suggest that you are officially dead when brain waves cease. So there's no detectable brain activity. As they say,
Yes.
brain dead.
Yes. I would agree with you there. When there is no electrical activity, there can't be any type of cognitive function or any type of sensual senses function.
Well, one of the things I remember, you know, I've known a lot of doctors in my life, and one of the things I remember from being younger is being told, you're not dead until you're warm and dead. Cold and dead is one thing, but warm and dead is a different thing. It's almost like if you're cold, you're in your brain can be in a little bit of a stasis, in like a refrigeration state, and it's only when you've been warmed up back to body temperature.
You know, another thing that contributes to this conversation is, are either of you familiar with what they call cellular memory?
Not by that phrasing.
The experience I'm talking about are those people, such as people that have received heart transplants and begin to have dreams of the individual who they have no connection with.
Now that's freaky.
That donated the heart. And there was a story I read on this one woman who was ballerina, very sophisticated, had to have an emergency heart transplant. And she has the transplant, and she comes out of surgery, and she's getting better. And you know, her husband says to her, he says, you know, what can I get for you? She said, you know, I really like a beer. He goes, a beer? You don't drink beer. She goes, I have a taste for beer. And this woman, she began to have dreams of an individual who had a name. And she researched that dream, and it turned out to be the person who was in a motorcycle accident, who drank beer, and that was his heart that she had. And you know what? I was reading an article, too, that cardiologists are aware of this phenomenon, but they really don't talk about it much. That it is a possibility. No, it is a possibility. And they've been talking about whether this is a cellular memory, to where is the cellular structure of bodies, do they contain that maybe DNA structure to where
Are you suggesting that there are things about human anatomy and biology and life that we don't fully understand yet?
No, I would never say that. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's those kind of things to where, like, well, what do we make of that? And then once again, it's like, can't deny the experience, but something's going on.
But don't don't gut bacteria and your digestive system have some influence on the brain? And,
they do.
Yes. Yes.
In ways that we don't
Fully understand.
And so you're suggesting that it's not just the gut that potentially is engaging with what we conceive of as memory and consciousness, but other organs as well.
As scientists, I think, we like to break things down into their particulars to study, but you know what? We don't function that way. I was reading, was at a conference, my neuropsychology conference, and this one doctor, Lisa Barrett, she's talking about brain function, and she basically said, yeah, the brain functions as a whole, people. I mean, it's not these little parts that do this, this, and this. She says it's a whole functioning unit that is always completely functioning, and you have to take that into consideration. And, her position was, there isn't a purpose to thinking. Thinking just evolved because of the cortex. I mean, that's part of the process of the cortex, that it evolved that way, but there wasn't any specific purpose to it, or divinely created.
Have you heard the idea that in science we try to figure out how a radio works by taking apart the whole radio and just examining one piece at a time? And it's really hard to get the whole concept when you're just looking at a single gear.
Right.
And that's but the whole brain or a whole organism or all of cellular biology all at once is very difficult, if not impossible, to study.
Exactly. That's exactly true. But I don't think we can ignore the fact that we're a whole functioning unit. And the three of us here individually and everyone, our brain functions its purpose is to make us function efficiently.
And it reminds me of a Western bias and the fact that, in this society, we tend to think of things as being, Western beliefs about the body and Western beliefs about consciousness and Western beliefs about life. It's true that other cultures in other parts of the world did not believe the brain was where the soul resided and where it was
the heart.
It was the heart. And so when you were talking your story about the heart transplant patient, the first thing that popped into my head were, the stories that I've read about the ancient Egyptians who genuinely believed that, the heart was the center of reasoning and thinking and not that I necessarily believe that to be true in its entirety, but
Well, you can't live without a heart, but you also can't live without a brain.
Yeah. So it goes back to this holistic notion of what the human is.
Yeah.
And this notion, because I think a lot of times there is a scientific bias towards wanting to compartmentalize. This is what this piece does. This is what that piece does, going to your radio analogy.
Yeah. And they all have to work together.
Right.
In ways that we might not fully understand.
Yeah. The only disposable parts of our bodies are a few organs and our limbs. You need the trunk and the head for sure to be alive. And at that point, it's important to read the disclaimer. Okay. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Lewis University. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. The Lewis University name and all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. This podcast was produced in the WLRA podcast studios at Lewis University. Visit lewisu.edu for more information about Lewis University. This is Science Coast with Mallory Havens and
Chris White
and
Tom Bristow.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.